Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I am Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach. I'm the founder of the Dream Business Mastermind and Coaching Program, creator of No Hassle newsletters, and author of 6 books, usually behind my shoulder, but not this month, which you can get for free. And I will tell you about that at the end of the show. But most importantly, today, I am the host of Dream Business Radio now in its 10th year. This is episode 545. Got a great show for you today. My special guest is Kevin Roth. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you.
Good. Excited to share your story. Folks, this episode of Dream Business Radio is brought to you by the Dream Business Mastermind and Coaching Program. Whoa, imagine that. If you're an entrepreneur, a small business owner who is tired of slow to no growth in your business, if you're feeling overwhelmed, unfocused, but especially if you'd like to learn how to create multiple streams of revenue, which is the number one way you actually create a very healthy income, then you want to be part of this extraordinary virtual mastermind led by me, Captain Jim. You can learn more at dreambizcoaching.com, dreambiz coaching.com. All right, let me tell you about Kevin Roth, and we will dive right in. Kevin began playing the dulcimer in 1972 at the age of 13. At 16, he recorded his first album. Yes, back then it was albums. And between 1974 and 1984, Kevin recorded 10 albums, established himself as a prominent folk singer and dulcimer player. In 1984, Kevin performed the theme for the PBS children's show, Shining Time Station. Kevin is friends and has collaborated with Paul Stuckey. You may recognize the name from the legendary trio Peter, Paul, and Mary. His musical career has taken him to concert and symphony stages around the world, including 2 appearances at the White House. And just when everything was going along swimmingly, I guess, then, boom, life took over. And Kevin, very much like my story, had a pretty bad diagnosis with melanoma. He had a choice to either accept a death sentence. His was worse than mine. He had either a death sentence or he chose to live. And obviously he chose life. We're so glad he did that. Kevin not only discovered, but in the process, how to survive, but also how to become truly happy and thrive. Today, Kevin now guides individuals and groups in the discovery of what really matters to them, how to accomplish their goals, and how to handle stress, something I think we both know about, which is an essential factor to a healthy life. Kevin, welcome again to Dream Business Radio, my friend.
Good to be with you again.
So
you
first
in Florida, in San Diego.
Florida, yeah, 2 pretty nice weather situations right now.
Yeah.
First of all, we're about the same age. We're both melanoma survivors, and so I'm happy to spend this time with you. But I'm also a fan of folk music, and it's really interesting that we connected. And I think before we catch up to what you're doing today, which is really how we got connected, let's go back to 1972. As I said, you were 13 years old. You started playing the dulcimer, and I was thinking, when I was 13, I bought a drum set. I wanted to be like Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees, right?
Mm.
How did you happen to pick up the dulcimer? I mean, was that like somebody handed it to you, or did you have interest in it? I didn't even know what a dulcimer was, actually.
I saw one at a party. I saw a young, pretty lady playing one in the kitchen at a party, and I just fell in love with the dulcimer, and then became friendly with her, and we're still friends. And so I've been playing dulcimer, and Anne's been a friend of mine for 55 years.
Wow. At what age did you realize? I mean, as I said, you actually you did a record album, and you're being a musician and songwriter and everything's pretty much your whole life. But when did you realize music was going to be your life? Like, did the bug bite you so much as a teenager, or what? Did you go to college, and what happened?
No, I started to play the piano by ear around the age of 4. So I was born with really 2 major things going on: music, and I was always spiritually curious. So I played the piano, and then one day my sister brought home a Peter, Paul, and Mary album, and I fell in love with Mary and their music. And then when I saw the dulcimer, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to be a performer like Peter, Paul, and Mary, and I'm going to make it. And I sort of I saw as a child really 3 distinct future visions of my life, which I talk about in my book. And the first phase was that life would be kind of difficult, but musical. And the second was it would be musical and successful, but difficult. And then the third was where I'm in now, which is successful and happy. and music was sort of my lifeboat through a lot of ups and downs in life. But I got very lucky, and I got a record deal at 14, and I got a TV show when I was in my late 20s, early 30s. Yeah, so yeah.
You had a record deal at 14?
Yeah, I played the dulcimer. I saw it at 13, and I got a record deal at 15. I'm sorry, it came out, I think, when I was 15 or 16 on Folkway Records. So I did a dozen albums for Folkways, which is part of the Smithsonian now. Then I got into children's family music and Shining Time Station, and then back to sort of adult music for a while till I went on a sabbatical leave of sorts.
Well, I'm guessing at that age, did your parents have to sign the contract, or how did that work?
That's a good question. They should have, but no. I went
Wow.
to the office of Moash, who ran Folkway Records, with an agent.
Okay.
And Mo, who ran Folkways, was a really gruff old Jewish guy who was very well known in New York City in the folk scene. I mean, he had Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger. And he said to me, come in my office. And then Dick got up with his briefcase, and he told Dick to wait outside.
Oh, boy.
And I signed the agreement. I didn't even think about it ever until this moment. Yeah, I wasn't 21. It wasn't a legal contract. But anyway, I signed one. It was like one page.
Yeah.
And I was just thrilled with the record deal.
I'm been a music fanatic in my whole life, and I've read so many autobiographies, like John Fogerty and Creedence, and about Grand Funk, how these contracts were so one-sided, and then all of a sudden, they start making all this money, but they get none of it. Maybe that was just the early 60s. I don't know what it was like in the 70s, but wow, that's pretty crazy.
I'll tell you a funny story. After I recorded for Folkways and got a bunch of recognition, musically at least, for my career, my father suggested that I start my own record label, because I had started to record for a children's record company, and the album Lullabies for Little Dreamers did really well. But I was getting, like 70, 80 cents royalty. So he said, start your own company. I said, well, I don't know how to do that. And he said, well, how much could it be? You pay for the recording, you're performing it, you've got the cassettes or the CDs, and it costs you $2 and you sell them for 10. And I did. So
That's a good plan.
I started my own record company. I don't know how old I was, but then later I signed with Sony Records and other major people, and they gave me a lot of money, but they weren't great deals. That's why I love being self-published and self-record companies, and just own the control, because then you can do what you want with it.
Did you start out playing other people's music, or did you know you were a songwriter? Because I know you've written a lot of music.
I did both. My main influences were Peter, Paul, and Mary, Joni Mitchell. Not many dulcimer players, interestingly enough. And then I started to write very young, sort of to get my feelings out. That's what is great about being a songwriter or an author, as you know, you get your feelings out. And what's wonderful about being a performer, especially when you're young or at any age, is that people applaud you and then they pay you for your thoughts.
Yeah.
Whether you're an idiot or not, they seem to do that. So,
So before I transition into the book, because me just being a music fanatic and I'm so fascinated with the whole industry, actually, did you have any, today we might call him a coach, but not in the 70s. Did you have any mentors? Your dad said, we should start a music, your own thing. Was anybody leading you by the hand at that point, or were you kind of figuring it out as you go, entrepreneur style?
I got nothing but bad advice.
Oh.
The advice that was great was from my dad and my gut. Because people they didn't want me to play a dulcimer because nobody knew what it was.
Yeah.
Then they wanted me to do things a certain way. And, if you say to me, go in this door, you can be guaranteed I'm going to take the side one. It's just my nature. So I have to sort of find my own niche and do it my own way. I did have a really good agent for a while, and she booked some shows. But when you're in the music business, you get to know other musicians and you hear about the good things and the bad things, and you keep your eye open and just cross your fingers and do your best.
Yeah. So Kevin, let's fast forward to really just a few years ago, 2015 to be exact. You get this phone call and your doctor tells you have stage 3 melanoma. And I read in your book where you then said he said you had a 70% chance of dying within 2 years. I mean, wow.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously I know it. I kind of know hearing news like that must have hit you like a ton of bricks.
Oh, it floored me. It completely changed my life.
Yeah.
Because when I went in to the dermatologist, it was just a routine dermatology appointment. He said, "But I don't like that dark freckle on your nose." So they
Hmm.
took that off, and then they said that wasn't cancer, and they were wrong. The pathology report was wrong. Then a couple months later, I had a lump under my chin and a lymph node, and they took that out. And then they called me 9 o'clock on a Monday morning and said, "Listen, you've got to get to an oncologist immediately."
Mm,
So that began the world of, I'm now in the world of the C world, cancer world, which I never in a million years thought I'd be in, because I never
right.
smoked, I never did anything. But as you found out, as many do, 1 out of every 2 people have cancer. The problem with the melanoma for me personally was that the type that I had, there's no cure.
Mm,
So I finally found an oncologist who was brilliant. And he said, look, you've got a 70% chance this thing's going to come back. Right now, there's no signs of any more cancer. So you have to wait a year. And then if it comes back, you probably have a couple of years left to live. And I knew in my gut, Jim, that I wasn't going to die. I
yeah.
knew it because I'd had a premonition about it. But man, that is a long year. But it was a
Yeah.
good year because that was the time that I said, you got to change your life. You've got to create a life you love instead of having to constantly make it and new records and touring and stress.
Yeah, when I was diagnosed, I was already unemployed for 1 year, so I was already in a pretty weak, bad place. And I mean, today I look back on that, and that I call that my season of crises. But that has completely changed my world. So it's like I don't want. It was no fun, but it really made me better man, a better person, better husband. I'm sure, a better father. All that. So it's kind of
Yeah.
weird how that works. In your book, and please feel to correct me if I'm wrong, but in your book, I also read where you had played a concert. I believe it was a New Year's concert, and you heard a Gloria Gaynor song, "I Will Survive." And did all of a sudden did that come flashing back to you? Did I remember that right?
Yeah. I start the book out with that story, and everybody loves that story. And everybody reads the book because of that story.
Yeah.
So the story is that I was playing a concert in Portland, Maine on New Year's Eve, and I was depressed. I was freezing cold because I used to live in Florida.
Hmm.
And I went to a diner, and there was really large, hefty waitress, and they were closing. And I was telling her, I guess, my troubles, and she was telling me her troubles. And she invited me to go to a dance club, and I said, "Well, I can't go because I can't dance." And she said, "Well, nobody knows you here, and you got all these strobe lights, and you could stand still and look like you're dancing." So we got a couple drinks, and we were on the dance floor, and they were playing Gloria Gaynor, and this woman, I didn't ever even knew her name, this waitress, but she had the biggest hips I've ever seen on any, and she would slam into me on purpose to like bounce me around the dance floor. And it was funny because it was the first time I remember just letting go and not being Kevin Roth, the
Mm,
former. And it was a lot of fun. And I get drunk quick because I don't really drink. Um, so I remembered it when I got a cancer. These things come flashing back into your mind. And I thought, there was a freedom there in that moment. And, you got a little rich Kevin, you got a little famous Kevin, and that didn't bring you happiness. So you better figure it out now, because if you have 2 years to live, you better
mm,
do it how Sinatra does it, my way.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you're much of a country music, but Alan Jackson has a song about a waitress, and I don't even know your name. Made me think of that when you said that. Um, so you wrote in your book, by the way, your book's called Between the Notes: Practical Ways to Find Your Inner Groove and Dance to a Beat That Makes Your Heart Sing. I love the last part of that. I mean, I like it all, but that makes your heart sing, which is great. Um, you thought of three pivotal questions that seem to grab your attention there, I guess, when you're on the couch shaking in fear. Do you remember what those three questions were?
Oh, yeah. What matters to me?
Yep.
Why does it matter to me? And what am I going to do about it?
Right.
And the answers were real quick in coming. What matters to me is my dog, my music, my art. and spirituality. Why does it matter? It's because it's authentically who I am. There's no bullshit involved. That's who you are. What are you
Mm-hmm.
going to do about it? Well, I was living in Kansas at the time. So I said, I'm getting the hell out of Kansas. It was February and it was freezing. And I said, I'm going to figure out a way to live in San Diego, almost bankrupt. So I called around and I got an apartment for what I could afford, which was great. It was like a miracle. And I moved to San Diego and never looked back. And
What were
then
you doing in Kansas? I'm sorry, Kevin. What were you doing in Kansas?
I was making a record album with Noel Paul Stuckey.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was hanging out with my sister for a while because my life
Mm-hmm.
sort of imploded back in Florida. So I went to live with her. Well, I ended up getting an apartment, but I ended up going there to kind of reframe my life, and that's where I got the diagnosis of cancer.
I'm sorry. So you were in Kansas when you got the diagnosis,
Yeah.
and then you, in figuring out who you are and what you wanted, had you lived in San Diego, or was that just a dream of yours?
No, about 15, 20 years prior, I owned a home here.
Okay.
That was during the rich and famous period of my life.
Okay.
But I said in Kansas, I said, I can afford $1,000 a month, and I want a
Mm-hmm.
1 bedroom by the beach with parking and laundry, which is almost impossible.
Mm.
But I found it, and I create these. And this is what I teach people to do. As a consultant or a teacher, is I teach people. The first thing I ask clients, is, what don't you want in your life anymore? Then what do you want? And know why, and then let's create it, because it's not impossible at all. I completely turned my life around, and the clients I work with, they've completely turned their life around. The key to doing this, as from all the books you've written and interviews you've given and the coaching you do, is you have to want it.
Yeah.
You have to be ready. You have to say, I am done with this unhappiness and I want to have some joy in my life. And then the universe opens up to you if you ask.
Yeah, it's interesting when I'm coaching people, and I always describe it as peeling the onion back, because some people, well, if I say, well, what do you want? And they'll give you an answer, and it's really not the right one. It's like, well, why do you want that? And it's going to peel the onion back. And then, well, why do you want that? Why does that mean peel back? And then you kind of get to the nub, maybe 2 or 3 questions. And I don't know if you've had that experience, but it is, I agree with you. It is important not only to ask somebody what they want, but what they don't want. And really, Kevin, I think probably in the last 3 years, it has crystallized with everything kind of we've gone through, and social media and all that. It's like, I do not want to be around negative people.
Yep.
I don't want naysayers or doomsayers. I don't want people telling me, no, you can't do it. It's like, man, I used to, in the old days of social media, you might, I'll give them one more chance. If somebody, like, pardon my expression, pisses all over, boom, you're gone. I just don't have time for it, and I don't want it. And actually, possibly more important than that is, I know what it does to my brain if I have to think about it and nurture it, I guess.
Yeah, I was telling a client just yesterday. I said, when you believe the negative thoughts, you suffer.
Mm-hmm.
So thoughts create feelings. So you have to look at, is this thing that's bothering you, first of all, is it even true? Like, for instance, money. People say, I want money. People don't want money. Money is just paper. They want the feeling that money gives them, right?
Right.
So
or the freedom it can provide, right?
Yeah. But the great thing about all this is when you tune into how to do it, at least for me, I do it on a daily level. And I'm always reinventing my life all the time, happily. It's like tuning a guitar. You get in tune when you get cancer, because you got to, right? You get in tune. And then as long as you tune your guitar every once in a while throughout the day, it stays in tune. If you ignore it, it goes way out of tune. And then
That's right.
So it's like I do retuning on myself throughout the day. It's all really automatic at this point.
What a great analogy. Being an author myself, I enjoy books, but I enjoy diagnosing, if you will, or diving in to see how they're written. So one of the first things I do, if there's going to be a book I'm going to read, or if I'm going to be interviewing a guest, I'll go to the table of contents, because I think the table of contents, well, this is going to seem like the obvious moment, but it's a window into what the whole book is. But for me, as a copywriter and a writer, it's a window into how creative, or instead of chapter 1, where it all began. I mean, that's kind of boring. But I think your chapter 1 was called Realization. which is kind of it's like inquisitive. Okay, let me ask you about that. So Kevin, let me ask you, what was the realization? Was that post cancer diagnosis or post, yeah, I'm going to be okay. Now I want to fix my life?
Well, I talk in the book about precognitive experiences that I've had throughout my life. And right before I moved to Kansas, I had a sort of a precognitive experience, some call it psychic, that I would come down with a major illness and it would be fairly serious, but I'd be okay. So
You
I
just
wrote
you felt that. You just instinctively knew that was going to happen?
my whole life,
Wow.
my whole life. Yeah. And it's a shift. It's a shift, and it's a strong one. It's a thing that says, stop, look, and listen. That's happened, and you and I have spoken before about my own coaching practices. That recently I hit a wall, a good wall, where it said, "What you're doing is great, but it's not working for you. So you need to step back and look at what is going on and follow it, knowing that it's going to be amazing. It's wonderful." So that's why when the doctor told me you'd be dead, I said, "No, I'm not."
I've had this dream and it doesn't end that way.
No, sorry, you're in the wrong picture, dude.
Yeah. Another chapter was called Rags to Riches Doesn't Equal Happiness. I kind of have a feeling what that one's about, but why don't you take a minute and share?
Well, I thought if I was rich and famous, I'd be happy. And you're not. Money doesn't buy happiness. It makes a more comfortable living. But when I've been very rich and I've been very broke. When you're a folk singer, it's pretty a tough living. But when I got the cancer and I ran through a lot of money and a lot of fear, I became a minimalist, not by choice, but because I knew I was moving and I couldn't take things with me because I didn't want to take the moving van. I'm still a minimalist, man. I love it. In fact, a friend came in here the other day. He says, "Your place is so clean." I said, "It is." I'm looking at the floor and thinking, I haven't cleaned the floor. And he said, "Yeah, it's like there's like very little things in here. It's like open, it's free." And I said, "Yeah, man, that's how I like to live. I could pack up the entire place in a day and leave."
I know exactly what you're talking about. When we sold our house and moved on the boat, we initially thought we'd do it for years. So we had a storage unit. But then when we figured we're going to do this for years, why pay that storage fee for all that stuff? We'd end up spending more money than we could replace everything in the storage unit. And so that was like a financial decision. But the result of that, Kevin, was I felt so light. We had our boat, we had one car, and we had a few things like really close mementos, personal possessions, an antique kitchen table, that type of stuff. That was always going to stay with us. But other than that, I didn't have a world of stuff. I didn't have a yard with a shed with tractors and snow blowers and weed whack, all that. I was free of stuff. I can't even describe. I never thought I'd be a minimalist. I don't even know if I am today, but I think I am by whoever's standards. But it feels so freeing. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and in the way that I handle negative thoughts that come into my head, which happens, for everybody being human, they come and they go, boom, boom. It's like I don't want the negativity, I don't want the drama, boom, boom, boom. It's a choice that we make, and that I teach people how to recognize and the tools to do to make it flow better for you.
Yeah. Two more chapters I want to ask you about, and then I want to talk about your coaching business. Everyday joy. What's that chapter about?
You got to get up and create it.
That's your responsibility, correct?
It's your responsibility, and you have to have mindful awareness. You need to be aware. Like, for instance, I do intermittent fasting because I like it. So I don't usually eat till about 1:00. This morning, I thought you need to eat something. I didn't know why. I wasn't hungry, but I trust it. So I follow my gut, which leads me to pretty good places. And I create my joy by mindfully watching what comes into my mind. So if there's a problem that occurs, it's not the end of the world. That's one of the things that cancer changes. When you can survive cancer, you can do anything almost,
It's like almost nothing bothers you, right?
Yeah. So you have a choice. Do I want to be happy or do I not want to be happy? And I just choose to be happy. And that's living a very simple life, very authentic, doing what you love and loving what you do.
I used to have, not that I was a hothead madman, but I used to have a fairly short fuse. And after the post cancer, the only thing that really lights me up if somebody hurts, harms, or makes fun of my kids or does something to my family, boy, that sets me up. Other than that, I don't care. Go ahead
Yeah,
in front of me. It just doesn't matter.
yeah,
And so the final chapter I want to ask you about real quick, tuning into silence.
yep, yeah. The mind likes to talk a lot,
Okay.
chatter. So I developed for myself something called dulcimer meditation, where I play the dulcimer simply and just sort of listen to my inner voice. Silence really is golden. If you can sort of send your mind into a quiet space and listen to your inner voice, there's a lot being spoken about, but we let our mind kind of run the show. It's like the monkey mind. So instead of letting that happen and having all the monkeys go crazy with their bananas, I hold the banana now.
Got about 6 minutes left, Kevin. So your book is called Between the Notes: Practical Ways to Find Your Inner Groove and Dance to a Beat That Makes Your Heart Sing. Obviously available on Amazon. What are some practical ways that my audience can learn to live in the groove, so to speak?
Well, as I spoke about it and I write about it in the book, the first thing is to ask yourself, are you happy? That's the first question. And what do you want to get rid of? What needs to go in your life? People, places, and things. What is working in your life? And how do you want your life to look? Do you want to be bogged down by certain things, money issues and relationships that are toxic? Or do you want to be free? A lot of my clients are middle-aged women who have had the role of mother and wife and business person, and they've forgotten their soul. So they have to rediscover me time. So I think when you live an authentic, simple life, you're better off. The tools that you do it with, I have many of them listed in the book. Things like going hiking, and there's a whole list of the whole chapter, practical tools that you can use when you're getting a little funky. And then gratitude, be grateful that, you're in this dream experience, and you're doing well. Like today, I don't have cancer today. I'm happy and talking to you. It's all good.
And you're a life coach, and you're taking some of what you learned through the cancer and through the being rich, being broken, all of that. And that's part of your business or your practice, is helping people live a better life. Who's a good client for you?
Anyone that wants to change.
Okay.
So what I do, and more than a coach, I don't really even like the word coach because I'm not even sure what that means, but I'm a consultant, a teacher, a mentor. I sort of teach clients, including doctors and guys in your corporation, the formula that I developed to let go of stress, feeling stuck and unhappy, and really find radical self-love and fun in their life. So my perfect client is someone who is willing to learn and willing to change. They have to be ready to change. So when I give free Zoom consultations, not free, but complimentary, where I get to know people who are interested in working with me through my website, kevinroth.org. And I can sense right away whether this is the right, whether I can help this person or it's the right connection, or do I send them somewhere else? It's like anything else. You know it when you see it.
Yeah.
And when people find me, and they do find me, they become family. That's why I only work with 6 clients at a time. I don't have like huge. I don't want to be a rock star coach or whatever.
So 6 clients at a time is that just because of the lifestyle you want to maintain for yourself, or do you spend hours and hours and hours with each client? Why 6?
No, it's because I care really deeply about their lives, and I spend a lot of time thinking about them when I'm not coaching or when I'm not doing a session, and I want to be 100% with them. And I also need balance for myself. So
otherwise you're going to slip back into worker bee and all that, right?
Yeah, it's not. I'll never slip back into that because that's not who I am anymore. But I have fairly high-paying clients, and they trust me, and they become family, and they're ready to change. I suppose I could have a whole lot more, but I don't want to be book solid with people. And it's about when what it really is about, Jim. It's about when that client gets on Zoom with me, and let's say they look stressed. At the end of the session, they no longer look stressed.
Yeah.
They look like, oh God, what a relief. I'm there. That's what it's about. Because then I'm not only doing my job, but it's like, it's just it's a good time. And I've done what I believe is the reason that I survived cancer, is showing other people what I did to change my life.
That's awesome. I call that filling the heart book. You got to fill the checkbook, but filling the heart book is when you can see and really feel the difference you're making in people's lives. That's awesome. Kevin, how can people connect with you? Where do you want them to get the book? Do you want them to go to Amazon? Do you want them to come to your website? What's your preferred method?
You can find the book, just won International Best Book Award on Amazon. So you can get the book. It's an ebook. It's a paperback. There's a CD of the music that's in the book. You can get that at my website, kevinroth.org, or on Amazon. And there's also an audio version that I read.
And you did the audio?
Yeah, that was a blast.
Are there songs? Did you put songs in there too?
No, we kept the songs out because of copyright stuff.
Right.
You can download the whole album of music. I think there's 15 tunes. It's like a retrospective of my music career, because each song I put in the book goes with each different chapter theme-wise.
Very cool. Well, I wish you a lot of luck, Kevin. Well, thanks so much for coming on Dream Business Radio.
Well, thanks for having me.
Hey, folks, that wraps up this very special interview with my guest, Kevin Roth. I highly recommend you connect with him. Get a copy of his book for sure. You'll thank me later, and download his music also. And my guess is you've heard of dulcimer, you just don't know it, right? You can connect with me at getjimpalmer.com if you're interested in joining me and about 27 other smart entrepreneurs in the Dream Business Mastermind. Again, you go to dreambizcoaching.com, dreambizcoaching.com. And so here's how you can get a copy of my books in digital format. If you're into Nook Books, which is Barnes & Noble, BNN.com, you can get them there. They're in the iBook store, all for free. And as Amazon, they're in the Kindle bookstore. There's another guy named Jim Palmer. He happened to pitch for the Baltimore Orioles. So you can't just put Jim Palmer. My number one book was my mindset book called Decide. So just go to Amazon, put Decide Jim Palmer. I'll pop up, click my name, comes up, and that brings up my author's page. You'll see all my books. You can download them all, get quite an education for free. But that's it. Until this time next week, another great interview. I am Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach, and you take good care.